up in North Nottinghamshire, and I like to think I still very much keep in touch, not only with my constituents, but where I came from and everything else. And I think this debate and this whole referendum has not been our country's greatest hour. I have to say, I have witnessed language on the streets, which is where I've been, in the East Midlands, which is where I'm from. And I have heard words used and language used, immigrants, get all these immigrants out. I've not witnessed that since I was a student here in Birmingham back in the mid-70s. And I am worried about the state of our nation. I think what's happened is that the tolerance that we are rightly proud to have as part and parcel of our fundamental values, to a large part, has been put aside by too many people. So now we need all to come back together, we need to rebuild communities, and we need to move on, and we have to put, if I may say, hope over hatred, and we have to stop preying on prejudice and fueling people's fears. We are where we are. Now we've got to come together and get on with the decisions.
But my guess is that, ignoring the punch on the nose, decades of ignoring the working class, there was a clear division, wasn't there, in the result of this referendum. One half of the country, the more prosperous, and London, Scotland, Scotland. And on the other hand, there were people who seemed to feel, according to everything they said, disaffected, left out in the countryside and in some of the poorer cities.
But it has to be said, a lot of people who voted Leave, they came from all classes in our society and backgrounds. And many people who voted Leave voted for reasons I don't agree with them, which were completely honourable. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people also voted Leave for reasons which I am deeply troubled by.
All right, Chris Abbott, what were you actually getting at?
And that was the immigration thing, and that was wrong.
Chris
I
Abbott.
think there's been I think what's been exposed by this referendum is the deep divisions within the country, and Labour strongholds like Walsall, my hometown, have voted to leave, and all over the country they've chosen the same idea to leave. Now, really, in the past that would never have happened, so there is massive disconnect, I believe, between the parties and their electorate to not be able to sort of galvanise that vote.
OK, Giles Fraser.
Did you say Walsall, sir? That's where you're from. I mean, I was a vicar in Blakeney Heath for a little while, so I know exactly where you're from. And these many people there feel left behind by globalisation, feel they haven't been listened to, attended to. Absolutely. And I understand the anger that comes from that. I think some of the anger has been misdirected. Some of that anger has been exploited by the far right in absolutely disgraceful ways, and that has to be said. But that anger is.
Who do you mean by the far right?
Well,
UKIP? Are you talking about UKIP?
I do. Yeah, I do think. I think that UKIP poster was absolutely disgraceful, and I think it's soiled an important argument that we're having. But the gentleman is right. There is a legitimate anger in places where people have been ignored for a very long time. They've been ignored by London, and now they're being sneered at for being angry, as if they were,
Okay.
And there are not. I just want to say one thing. There are not 17.4 million racists in this country, and that's absolutely important to say.
Okay. Do you want to respond to what he said about UKIP?
Well, look, UKIP certainly isn't a far-right party. We've campaigned against the European Union since our inception, and I just think that this really was the people versus the establishment. It was ordinary working-class people against the Brussels elite, against the big banks, against big business, against Project Fear. And I just want to know where the Chancellor is at the moment, because he seems to have disappeared altogether. Now, Giles spoke about, the sneering now because people were angry. I'll give you an example. A Guardian columnist yesterday wrote that we've got Brexit because of northern crappy towns. Places like Preston and my constituency, places like Wigan and Blackburn and Burnley. I've had enough of this London-centric metropolitan snobbery which has infested this country for far too long.
All right, OK, Paul, enough. Alex Salmond.
Well, I can exclusively reveal where the Chancellor is. He's been kidnapped, but nobody's going to pay the ransom, and that's why I'm saying it. But in reality, let's face it, there were two project fears, not one project fear. There was the project fear on the economy led by the Prime Minister and the Chancellor, but there was also the other project fear, and that's the one on immigration, which was at the heart of the Out campaign. And the consequences, given that the Out campaign won, the consequences for society of that project fear, I think, are very deep. And therefore, the first thing that politicians should be doing, not worrying about the dislocation in their own parties, should be worrying about the dislocation that might cause in communities. Now, I am not a signed-up member of the British establishment. I really am not. And I'm extremely proud that the one political leader who wasn't turned over by the electorate on Thursday was Nicola Sturgeon, who got a resounding vote to remain in Scotland and Europe last Thursday. But I do recognise that the political establishments who have been rejected by their electorate better start facing and better start reconnecting, and how you do that and how you offer people hope, because there is only one antidote to fear, whether it's fear of the economy or fear of immigration, and that's to offer people hope and a way forward. OK, let's hear from some members of our audience. You at the back there.
I'm a student myself. I'm a law student here at the University of Birmingham, and just like me, the majority of young people voted to remain. So I just want to know from you what you think the golden opportunities are for students now that we've left the European Union.
Well, and can I just add a rider to that? Are you alarmed at the high proportion of young people who are really upset by the way the vote went, because the proportion of them voted, the larger proportion of them voted to remain?
I am concerned to make sure all of the 48%, including the younger generation, are carried with us. I have to say, I think the EU has been disastrous for the younger generation, given the levels of youth unemployment in the EU, and particularly in the Eurozone, rising to 50%. But I think we do need to do more to spell out the positive vision to carry your generation, but actually the whole country with us.
What opportunities are there? What opportunities do you think will come from Brexit?
So I think there'll be stronger economic opportunities from jobs, higher wages.
All right, you?
Well, I'm sorry, I would love to have answered your question, but David's moved on.
Well, I've got to move on because we've only got another quarter of an hour. Yes.
Well, I know Anna Soubry alluded to it earlier, but I wonder what she'd say to this 19-year-old that voted Leave. I'm afraid that, and this is not to be condescending or to denigrate, I think that a lot of my generation was incredibly naive in this referendum. Many of them, and I was talking to my peers, talked about the fact that they believed they could get change in the EU. I'm afraid all the empirical evidence, such as David Cameron's renegotiation, and the actual structure of the EU showed that we weren't going to get that.
OK. Yes, no, you've done it. Anna. And then I'll come to you. Yes.
Look, as I said, we are where we are. We've had the referendum. People have spoken. They've voted for us to leave the EU. Now we must come together and we must negotiate on behalf of everybody the best deal. The other thing that I think does need to be said is this. For decades, not me, because I've always believed we were better off in the EU, but for decades, politicians from both the main parties had frankly said the EU was the root of most of our troubles. And had also, let's be honest about it, nobody had really made the case, positive case, for immigration into our country. And if there's anything that comes out of this, and I can give you this absolute promise, whatever my future may or may not be, I won't stand back any longer and make the positive case for migration and immigration in our country. It has delivered for decades to the benefit of our nation, both economically and socially and culturally.
Are you saying? Sorry, you're saying the positive case wasn't made.
Sorry?
You're saying the positive case wasn't made.
Yes, it's been a real failing of all of us as politicians.
Why did David Cameron not make the positive case?
No, I'm talking about about me, if I dare say. I put my hands up. I've always been liberal on immigration. I've always said that these things, they've not often found a voice and people haven't listened. And now let us as a society, let's debate immigration and let that positive voice sing out about the positive benefits of people who come here to work. They're good people.
I will be positive about immigration, OK? I will be positive about immigration. Immigration is exceptionally positive when it is controlled. And that's what we've got now. We're going to get back control of our own borders, and therefore the people who will make the decisions will be the people we elect at Westminster. It's the right way to do it. Listen, no, we don't, whilst we're in the European Union, signs up to freedom of movement of people. We can take back that control and we can be like Australia.
The man in the green shirt there, you, sir. Yes.
Can I just say how upset I am with the Remain side of the argument? Because you only consider the EU migrants in this country. Us non-EU migrants, we've been discriminated hugely by the UK immigration system because there are high numbers coming in from the EU, and all the opportunities, all the chances, all the jobs are going to EU nationals,
Sir,
and us non-EU nationals have no rights whatsoever in this country.
I understand that argument, sir, and I heard that argument, but I put it to you, if you really think that the right of the Conservative Party and UKIP want to have fewer Eastern European migrants so they can have more Commonwealth migrants, you haven't been paying attention. Now, on the question of lies and misrepresentation, which somebody raised, you know, some of the promises made by the Leave people unravelled within hours. So Dominic is now telling us we want to take our time. Lots of people voted thinking we'd come out of Europe today.
We never said that, Dan.
Can I add?
Immigration.
Oh, we led, but we didn't say.
Controlling immigration.
You guys just want to rerun the debate. Let's move forward, not backwards.
No, but it's important to show how the promises that people voted on have unravelled within hours.
They haven't.
You talked about immigration. Daniel Hannam, hours after the poll, was saying, well, no, we're not going to bring down numbers of migrants. And as for those millions of pounds that the Leave people said were going to be spent on the NHS, Nigel Farage said, oh, that was a mistake. We never meant to say that. Their story is unravelling.
So you'd like the referendum fought again? You'd like the referendum fought again to give people a second chance?
I said right at the beginning, David, it's an important vote and I respect the vote.
Oh, look, what are you saying there? Don't shut up. Wait, you've got a microphone.
Nothing to do with Vote Leave. I know, because if you was, I wouldn't have joined Vote Leave and campaigned for them. It was Vote Leave that had that slogan on the side of the bus, not Nigel Farage. So please, stop scaremongering again. We're 5 minutes in and you're back. I'm sick of it. If you want to win an election, stop with the sanctimony, because we're sick and tired of it, OK?
What's your point? Just make it clear.
Basically going on, there was an interview on This Morning with Nigel Farage, and the presenter challenged him over the £350 million, whether it was going to be spent on the NHS. Nigel, that was Vote Leave. It wasn't Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage was nothing to do with Vote Leave.
Whoever had the £350 million, we're all agreed it was a lie.
Yes. All right, let's leave that. I want to take a question from Margaret Sutton, and I will give time for general questions at the end if I can. Margaret Sutton, let's have your question.
Remain threatened that a vote to leave would bring Armageddon. Has Armageddon arrived for our political parties instead?
Well, when we went on air, I think Diane Abbott, Jeremy Corbyn had lost 10 members of the Shadow Cabinet. While we've been on air, you won't know this, he's lost another one, which is the Shadow Attorney General, Carl Turner. So, from Labour's point of view, the party does seem to be unravelling under the pressure of this referendum. People seem very unhappy with what Jeremy Corbyn did. And we'll come to the Tory party in a moment.
On the question of Armageddon, I actually think the Project Fear stuff was exaggerated and in the end didn't convince people. That's why the Leave people won. On the question of Jeremy Corbyn, it's a funny thing, you know. One of the I think, the clear lessons of this vote to come out of the EU is that people all over the country don't want politics as usual. And if there is any party leader who stands for not politics as usual, it is Jeremy Corbyn. The truth is, the Labour MPs who've been running around in circles today have been planning this for months. And I believe, because they have never accepted the result of last summer's leadership
But hang on,
election.
it's because they didn't accept that he played a proper part in the referendum campaign.
No, David, they've been talking about this for months.
It's irrelevant how he ran the campaign.
No, they've used this, but they've been talking about it for months. But my real point is, following on from this vote, we should be talking about the people. We should be going out to people. We should be reconstructing our relationships with our base. We shouldn't be running around playing Westminster games.
All right, Alexander.
Well, I was just going to say, I think the lady had a great question. I mean, although Nicola Sturgeon looks in fine fettle at the present moment, but we've got the... Well, she does.
Well, let's not have
we've got
the SNP as an answer to every question.
Yeah, I know you never like to talk about it, but don't mind. The Prime Minister's gone. 11 members of the shadow cabinet have gone. Jeremy Corbyn might be going. I mean, David, I'm just glad you're still here. You are the fixture. You're the only thing left for the big constitution.
David,
I hate to tell you I'm not part of the Constitution. Anna Soubry.
The going of Carl Turner is very significant. Carl Turner is no Blairite or troublemaker. He's quite far into the left of the Labour Party, and it's deeply significant that Carl has gone. I have a lot of time for him. Look, obviously Diane doesn't want to talk about the meltdown in the Labour Party. But the most I'll more than happily talk about my party. But you know, we need a good, strong opposition. It's good for democracy.
Let's talk about a good, strong government.
Let's talk about my party.
All right. Do you want Boris as Prime Minister leading your party?
I'm not friends with Boris at the moment.
No,
argument that having led this, he should jolly well get on and make the best of what he has brought us to. But I want a leader who can be a proper world player, who is a grown-up leader with the credibility and also has had senior experience in national government.
Anyone in mind?
Actually, I have an open mind. I think we have to make out... No, I genuinely, you know me, I say what I think. I think there are some very good people coming forward, and they have... But it's the qualities that we need first before we determine the person.
Brief one, and then I'm going to open it to the audience.
I'm a Corbyn fan. But I think probably the Blairites are making their move now because the Chilcot report's coming out. What is it, next month? And we know what's going to happen to them after that. But actually, to be serious, the problem is for the Labour Party, and I have no happiness to say this, is much deeper, because what this referendum has revealed is how out of touch so many of the Labour Party are with their base, and that gap, and it's extremely worrying, I think, because the people who might be beneficiaries of that are the far right, and that worries me enormously.
Okay. Now, we've got by my watch about just over 5 minutes to go. We've heard a lot of arguments. There's one particular thing I want to raise, because 3 million people who voted to remain have now asked for another vote and a petition. I want to hear from people who voted remain and feel that somehow things went wrong for them or they're discontented with the answer. None of you. You are, sir. Yes.
Yes. I think the British public not only voted for Brexit, but they voted it was a no-confidence vote in this government. So we should have a general election.
Right. Anybody? Did you vote Remain? Let's hear from you.
Yes. So if we did have a general election, if we and the winning side explicitly campaigned not to invoke Article 50, is it a realistic possibility there could be a second referendum? That's what I'm clinging to.
What, that you you'd have a general election and then a second referendum after negotiations?
Yes, provided the winning
Does
party...
anybody think that's possible?
Do you know there's a petition up at the moment, isn't there, to have a...
3 million, I was just saying.
3 million people, and there's 39,000 of them that signed up from Vatican City, which only has 800 people living there.
Looking at the details, I think it's only around 400,000 people who've signed that petition are eligible to vote in this country. Now, just back to the question about the fragmentation of politics, I literally feel as if the Westminster jigsaw has been thrown on the floor, and they're really going to have to try to put this back together. And I don't think, in the long term, the Labour Party can survive in its current form, because if Corbyn gets 35 signatories, he will go back on that ballot paper and he will be re-elected. Yes. And then in the end, people like Chuka Umunna and Tristram Hunt will have to make a decision. And I can see a Gang of Four moment coming down the line again, and maybe a new political party coming out of this.
And talking of new political parties, has UKIP now done its bit and can now retire?
No, absolutely not. No. Giles said that there is a fragmentation between the Labour Party parliamentary party and its base, particularly in northern working class seats. That's where UKIP's future lies. They had the biggest votes for Brexit, and we're doing exceptionally well in those areas.
Open house. You with the spectacles on there. Okay. Yes, you, yes. Quickly, if you would.
Okay. With the request for another referendum, let's entertain this for just for a moment. What happens if people still vote leave in a second referendum? Do we just continue having referendum after referendum until people get it right?
No. Never again.
All right. Well,
Never again.
All right. And you, sir. Yes. You, yes.
So I voted Remain, and it's left me feeling quite upset about leaving the EU, but also with a deep mistrust of politicians from both sides of the campaign. I've heard a lot of rhetoric about we're going to build hope and bring people together, but what are you actually going to do?
What is it that worries you?
It worries me that there's a lot of parts of society that are now marginalised and feel they're not part of this country, which I think led a lot of people to leave and left a lot of people on the Remain side feeling that now they're marginalised and don't feel connected to society. So I wondered what to actually do about that.
What would you recommend?
I think there needs to be a real engagement with politics. I'm quite strongly Labour, and I think Corbyn's a really good leader, and I think people spend a lot of time trying to undermine him because he does something different to usual politicians.
Okay. And you up there, sir, in the middle at the back. Yes, you.
Do you think it was irresponsible of Cameron not to negotiate a scenario for a Brexit when he went to negotiate the exit terms?
Well, he should have done the two things, you mean, at the same time?
He should have done the two things at the same time. So we had two scenarios.
I think if there's something that's gone wrong, the problem has been is that you can't say to people after decades of telling them the EU is not good, in 4 months to say to people, actually, not only is it rather good, but positively go out and vote for it.
All right,
so
Dominic Raab,
that's been the
do you want to counter this point, or do you agree with her?
On which particular aspect?
Or what she just said? Or weren't you listening?
You weren't listening.
I was listening, but I was focused on the question in particular about the political class being broken. I don't see how, or trust in the political class being broken. If that's true, and I hope it's not, and I hope it's salvageable, but I don't see how the answer to that could be to ignore the outcome of a referendum where we've got the biggest direct democratic mandate for change in recent history, certainly in my lifetime. So I think the answer has to be to respect that verdict, but make sure and try and find some